In terms of employee pay, oftentimes employers get caught up in legal requirements that they were unaware of. For example, there are certain wage and reporting requirements in terms of keeping documentation and providing written notification to employees of their rate of pay, as well as their overtime rate of pay. Some employees are paid on an hourly basis. Some employees are paid on a salaried or an annual basis. And there's often a misconception that if you receive a straight salary, that you're not entitled to overtime pay, and that's not always accurate. Employers need to understand that the wage and overtime laws are really very technical and very complicated in terms of who is entitled to overtime pay and who is not. And a lot of times there are gray areas regarding whether a particular employee falls within one of the exemptions of the overtime laws or whether they are actually required to be paying that employee overtime. In the event that you are mistaken, whether your mistake is intentional or inadvertent, you could be subjected to some serious fines from New York State Department of Labor laws, as well as the Fair Labor Standards Act provisions in the form of what we call liquidated damages. You could be subjected also to paying the attorney's fees of the employee's counsel if that employee brings a successful claim against you for failure to pay overtime. So if you have any doubt, you have any question about whether or not you're required to pay a particular employee overtime, you should absolutely seek legal advice in order to determine that. Simple research can be done with specific cases to back up your analysis of the matter and determine with finality whether or not you're required to pay that employee overtime. Sometimes overtime issues can span the life of 6 years. 6 years of failing to pay overtime can also subject you to a very large damage award at the end of the day, on top of which, as I mentioned, there are these liquidated damages and attorney's fees provisions. So it's really critical that you make sure that you're complying with the wage and overtime laws if you are having an employee work more than the 40 hours a week, or in certain circumstances 44 hours a week, that are required to then trigger those overtime provisions.